Deep in the mountains of Kentucky, where the Appalachian foothills rise and fall like dark waves against the sky. There are roads that twist back on themselves again and again. Narrow, steep, and carved directly into ancient mountains. During the day, they are dangerous enough. But at night, they become something else entirely. Headlights catch figures standing where no one should be. Tires roll over gravel that sounds like whispering voices. And sometimes, the road ahead looks longer than it should be. Locals warn travelers never to drive these roads after dark. They speak of cars found abandoned with engines still warm. Of drivers who swear they passed the same curve again and again. And of faces appearing in the rearview mirror where no passenger ever sat. Tonight, we take a slow drive into the Appalachian darkness. Along the most haunted switchback roads in Kentucky. Places where the mountains remember every crash, every scream, and every soul that never made it down the hill. Hello, my dear friend. I am truly glad you are here with me tonight. I hope you are somewhere safe, somewhere far from steep drops and winding mountain roads, because the places we are about to visit are unforgiving. Kentucky's Appalachian region is ancient. Older than memory. Older than roads themselves. When settlers carved paths into these mountains, they followed the land's natural curves. Switchback roads were the only way to climb and descend safely. But safety was never guaranteed. Before guardrails. Before modern engineering. Cars plunged into ravines. Wagons overturned. People vanished into forests so dense that bodies were never recovered. Some of these roads pass burial sites. Some were built over old trails. Some cut straight through land locals say should never have been disturbed. Drivers today report sudden fog that appears without warning. Engines stalling on steep climbs. And the overwhelming feeling of being watched from the trees lining the road. Before we start the engine, let me ask you something. If you were driving alone at night on a mountain switchback road and your headlights revealed a person standing silently in the middle of the curve ahead, would you stop the car or keep driving no matter what? Now take a slow breath. Grip the wheel. And let us begin our journey through the haunted Appalachian switchback roads of Kentucky. Winding through the steep mountain pass is a stretch of asphalt known locally as Devil's Turn. It is a notorious hairpin curve, a near 180-degree bend with no guardrail, only a crumbling shoulder that gives way to a sheer, wooded drop of several hundred feet. The curve is blind, and the approach, especially at night or in fog, is a test of nerve. Countless crosses and faded flowers dot the trees on the inside of the bend, silent reminders of those who misjudged the turn. For decades, drivers have reported an unusual guardian at this deadly spot. The story is always the same. As they approach the curve, their headlights will illuminate a man standing at the very edge of the drop-off. He is described as tall, dressed in dark, plain clothing, often resembling that of a highway worker from a bygone era. His posture is not menacing, but urgent. He faces the oncoming traffic and makes a clear, slow, two-handed gesture, waving drivers down, signaling them to slow their speed. His face is usually shadowed. But his intent seems unmistakably protective. The reaction of the driver is instinctive. They hit the brakes, slowing the car to a crawl or even coming to a complete stop just before the sharpest part of the turn. It is in that moment of halted momentum, with the headlights fixed on the figure, that he vanishes. He does not step back or fade slowly. He is simply gone from the spot, as if he was never there. And from the dark void of the slope below, carried up on the cold mountain air, comes the sound of laughter. It is not a cruel or a bright, echoing chuckle. That seems to tumble down through before being swallowed by the night. The history of the turn is written in accident reports. Before modern signage and improved tires, it was a death trap. The most poignant story involves a road crew foreman named Elias. He was a man known for his meticulous care and a dry, quiet sense of humor. He had petitioned the county for a guardrail at that bend for years, calling it an accident waiting to happen. One autumn evening, while placing warning flares for overnight roadwork, he saw a car full of teenagers speeding toward the curve, distracted and clearly unaware of the danger. Witnesses from a following truck stated that Elias ran into the road, waving his arms frantically. The driver saw him, swerved, and skidded to a stop, safely navigated the turn at a crawl. But Elias, stepping back from the skidding vehicle, lost his footing on the loose gravel of the shoulder and fell down the steep slope. His body was recovered the next day. The laughter was not part of the official report, but the first drivers to report the phantom mentioned it, saying it held the ghost of a joke only he understood. Modern investigations have tried to debunk the phenomenon. They cite pareidolia, the brain's tendency to see human shapes in shadows, and the effect of high beams on mist or rising ground fog. Yet the reports are too consistent, the described gestures too specific. Dash cameras have captured strange, brief anomalies at the roadside. Often just a blur of light or a shadow that moves against the wind. But never the clear figure described. The laughter has been caught on a few audio recordings. A faint, disembodied sound that audio filters cannot isolate as an animal call or a trick of the wind. To drive Devil's turn at night is to enter a zone of heightened awareness. The road narrows, the darkness deepens, and every shadow seems poised to move. When the figure appears, the relief of seeing a warning is instantly overwritten by the terror of his disappearance. And the eerie, echoing laughter that follows. It transforms a moment of potential disaster into one of profound mystery. The phenomenon does not feel like a traditional haunting. It feels like a ritual, a perfect loop of intervention and consequence. The figure performs his duty, succeeding every time in making the driver slow down, thus preventing the very accident he died trying to stop. The laughter, then, is the release. It is the sound of a job well done, a cosmic punchline to the grim joke of his own demise. He is not a ghost trapped in sorrow, but a spirit perfected in purpose, forever standing his post at the edge of the abyss, using the last moment of his life to save others, and finding, in that endless repetition, a reason to laugh into the darkness below. On a winding mountain road known as the Ridgeway, there is a curve that has earned a grim and enduring name. It is called Widowmaker Bend. The name is not a colorful local legend, but a stark, historical fact. Decades ago, on an icy December night, a car carrying a young couple home from a holiday party failed to navigate this sharp, descending turn. It left the road, tumbling down the steep, wooded embankment. The driver, a man named Peter, was killed instantly. His fiancée copyright E. Elara, survived the crash but was trapped in the wreckage for hours before rescuers could reach her through the storm. The tragedy was noted in the papers, and the name, born from grim reality, stuck. Over the years, the road was improved. Guardrails were installed. The curve was banked more carefully, and the surface was treated for ice. Yet the bend retains its reputation for a peculiar and persistent phenomenon. Cars, perfectly functional vehicles of all makes and models, often stall at the exact same spot. It is not the engine sputtering or struggling. It is a complete and sudden cessation, as if the ignition has been turned off. The electrical systems die, the dashboard goes dark, and the vehicle rolls to a silent stop, just past the apex of the curve. The experience is uniformly described as deeply unsettling. The modern world of combustion and electronics is abruptly replaced by an eerie quiet. broken only by the sound of the wind in the tall pines. It is in this sudden silence that the second part of the phenomenon occurs. Drivers and passengers report hearing a distinct sound from the dense trees that line the downhill side of the bend. It is the sound of a woman crying. The crying is not hysterical or loud. It is a soft, mournful, and utterly lost sound, the kind of weeping that comes from a depth of shock and grief. It seems to emanate from the shadows between the trunks, impossible to locate, yet unmistakably present. Attempts to restart the car during this time are universally futile. The engine will not turn over. The electronics remain dead. After several minutes, as abruptly as it began, the crying fades, dissolving into the natural sounds of the forest. Only then will the car's systems reactivate, often starting on the first try as if nothing had ever been wrong. Drivers invariably leave the spot quickly, their vehicle's performance returning to normal for the rest of their journey. Investigations into the original crash reveal a haunting detail often omitted from the brief newspaper account. In her statement to police, Elara recounted that after the impact, she was conscious but pinned. She could hear the distant whistle of the winter wind, and the creaking of the wrecked car. And for a long, terrible time before help arrived, she cried. Not from her own injuries, which were severe, but from the profound and immediate understanding of her loss, trapped in the cold dark with the person she loved most. This emotional history provides a compelling key. Paranormal theorists suggest that the intensity of Elara's trapped grief, combined with the violent arrest of the car's motion, created a powerful psychic imprint on the location. The phenomenon is not an attack, but a reliving. The bend becomes a stage where that moment of traumatic stasis is briefly recreated for anyone who passes through in a vehicle. The car's refusal to start is a critical part of the reenactment. It enforces a period of helpless immobility, forcing the modern driver into a minute of the same powerless silence that Elara endured. You are not hearing a ghost. You are being made to participate, however briefly, in the sensory aftermath of the accident. Widowmaker Bend is therefore a place of empathetic haunting. The stall strips away the illusion of control. The crying sound imparts the emotional truth of the event. Together, they transform a simple curve in the road into a memorial of sensation. The lesson is one. Some sorrow is so powerful it becomes part of the landscape. Waiting for the right conditionanza, a passing car, a quiet night to briefly teach its history. Not through words, but through a failed engine and the sound of tears in the dark. It reminds us that places remember not just events, but the raw human emotion that filled them. And sometimes, they ask us to sit quietly in that memory, if only for a moment, before we are allowed to move on. Where the old mountain highway dips into a narrow, wooded valley, there is a place truckers and late-night drivers speak of in low tones. It is known as Black Hollow Switch, a sharp bend where the road crosses a forgotten railroad spur. The geography is unremarkable by day, a shaded curve of asphalt flanked by pine and rock. But it possesses a unique and disquieting meteorological behavior. The fog here does not roll in. It materializes. One moment, the road is clear. The road is clear. The next, a thin, milky tendril will curl across the asphalt from the ditch. Within seconds, it is joined by others, boiling up from the ground and pouring from the trees with unnatural speed. In less than a minute, the entire hollow is filled with a dense, woolen blanket of fog so thick it swallows sound. The world shrinks to a few feet of gray, swirling vapor. Even high-beam headlights become useless, their light reflecting violently back at the driver, creating a blinding white wall. The instinct is to slow to a crawl, to navigate purely by the feel of the road's edge. And it is during this tense, silent passage that the watchers appear. They are first seen as darker smudges in the uniform gray, standing just beyond the shoulder, where the gravel meets the undergrowth. As the vehicle creeps past, the smudges resolve into the silhouettes of people. They are of varying heights, some tall, some shorter, like a scattered group. They stand perfectly still, facing the road. No details are visible, no faces or clothing, only the solid human shape. They do not move, they do not gesture, they do not turn their heads. They simply exist, spaced every 20 or 30 feet along the roadside, passive observers to the slow-motion parade of trapped motorists. The experience is one of profound, silent scrutiny. The experience is one of profound, silent scrutiny. The experience is one of profound, silent scrutiny. A meteorologist named David became obsessed with Black Hollow Switch after hearing too many consistent reports to dismiss. He hypothesized a cold air sink, a unique confluence of groundwater and temperature that could explain the rapid fog formation. He also decided to be present, parked in a pull-off just before the bend, to witness it personally. His instruments registered a sudden, precipitous drop in temperature at ground level moments before the fog appeared, just as he predicted. But the speed of the condensation was off the charts, as if the very air was eager to transform. Then the wall of white engulfed his vehicle. He turned on his high beams. And saw only a solid, glowing barrier. He inched forward onto the road. The first figure appeared on the passenger side. A tall, dark cutout against the shifting gray. Then another. And another. His scientific mind noted their spacing, their stillness. But a deeper, older part of his brain felt the weight of their attention. It was not hostile. It was observational, a pure, simple witnessing. He felt like a specimen under glass, moving through a prepared slide. He drove the full half-mile length of the hollow, passing perhaps 24 of the silent sentinels, before the fog thinned as abruptly as it had formed, and he was back under clear, starry sky. His cameras had captured nothing but gray. His sensors told a story of impossible condensation. But the human experience defied his numbers. He interviewed longtime residents of the nearest town, and a different story emerged, not of weather, but of history. Black Hollow Switch was once a busy railroad crossing for a logging community perched on the ridge above. The train would stop to collect workers at a small wooden platform right by the bend. Every morning and every evening, in all weather, the men, women, and older children of the community would gather there to wait. They stood along the roadside, watching for the train's light in the fog, or watching it depart. The community is gone now, the ridge empty. But the pattern, it seems, remains. David's final report was a fascinating study in microclimate formation. His personal conclusion was something else. The sudden fog, he believes, is not the phenomenon. It is the curtain. It recreates the condition under which the memory is strongest. The watchers are not ghosts. They are the echo of a daily ritual of waiting and watching, so deeply ingrained in the place that when the right atmospheric conditions align, the hollow reverts to its old purpose. The figures are not seeing the cars. They are looking past them, for the headlamp of a train that will never come, performing a faithful, silent roll call in the mist. David no longer drives that road at night. He respects the schedule. He understands that some places are loyal to their past routines. And that Black Hollow Switch keeps its appointment every time the fog draws its curtain. The watchers are not threatening. They are just waiting, as they always have. And to pass by them is to momentarily join a memory that lingers, patient and attentive, in the hollow's cool, still air. Deep within the pine forests of the north, where the modern highway now carves a smooth, efficient path, an older road remains. It is a forgotten artery, a winding strip of cracked and patched asphalt known locally as Old Timber Curve. This road was not built for scenic drives or casual travel. It was engineered for weight and purpose, cut through the woods to haul the riches of the forest. For decades, it trembled under the load of massive logging trucks, their tires taller than a person, their frames laden with ancient timber. The road bore the scars of that labor, its surface rutted by countless tons, its shoulders beaten wide by trucks that needed every inch to navigate the curve that gave the road its name. Today, the logging operations have moved deeper into the wilderness. The curve is quiet, a relic slowly being reclaimed by moss and ferns. Yet, on certain nights, the forest remembers. It begins with a sound. Not the gentle rustle of leaves, but the deep, mechanical groan of a diesel engine being worked hard. Motorists who find themselves on the curve after dark, perhaps taking a wrong turn or seeking a shortcut, report more than just sounds. They describe a sudden, physical sensation. Their own vehicle, a modern sedan or a small truck, will lurch violently. The steering wheel shudders in their hands. The rearview mirror shows empty road, glowing red in their own taillights, with nothing approaching for miles. Some have pulled over, shaken, to inspect their vehicle for damage. They find no dents, no scratches, no evidence of a collision. Only the silent, dark road behind them. And the lingering smell of pine sap and, some say, the faint, sharp odor of hot brake pads and engine oil. The history of the curve holds clues to its enduring echo. In the archives of the now-defunct timber company, there is a single, brief mention of an incident. Not a catastrophic crash, but a moment of strained mechanics. A fully loaded truck, its brakes overheating from the long descent, suffered a momentary loss of control on the curve. The driver, skilled and calm, did not jackknife or leave the road. Instead, he managed to guide the massive rig through a controlled, grinding scrape along the granite outcrop that lines the bend. The truck was saved, the load secured, and the driver finished his route. It was considered a non-event. A testament to a driver's skill under pressure. And was never officially recorded as an accident. But perhaps such a moment of immense tension, of metal screaming against stone and 1,000 trees worth of weight held in balance, can imprint itself on a location. The sound of grinding gears may not be a replay of a crash, but a reverberation of that specific, intense effort. The lurch felt by modern drivers could be the echo of that single, monumental shift in momentum, a ripple in time that still crosses the path of anyone on the curve. There is a theory that some roads, like old rivers, develop a current. A habitual path of energy born from repetition. Old Timber Curve knew only one purpose for years, the rhythmic passage of heavy trucks. When that purpose ceased, the groove of that habit may have remained. The sounds and sensations are the road's memory, playing out its former life, expecting the weight that never comes. Those who know the area give simple advice. If you must drive Old Timber Curve at night, keep a steady pace. Do not stop on the bend. If you hear the gears, or feel the lurch, do not panic. Acknowledge it, and continue on. It is not a haunting of malice, but of momentum. The memory of a different time, when the forest gave up its giants. And the road shook with their passing. You have simply, for a moment, drifted into the deep ruts of the past, and felt the ghost of a load that still needs to get home. On a lonely stretch of mountain highway known as Raven Loop Road, the forest holds a silent vigil. The road curves tightly, a narrow ribbon of asphalt clinging to the side of a deep gorge. The trees here are old and gnarled, their branches forming a dense canopy. And on these branches, lining the road for nearly half a mile, ravens perch. They are not a scattered flock, but a deliberate assembly, spaced with an almost formal regularity. They do not caw, they do not preen, they do not fight. They simply sit, facing the road, their dark, intelligent eyes tracking every vehicle that passes. Drivers who pass through report a profound sense of being observed, a feeling that has nothing to do with simple animal curiosity. The ravens' heads turn in unison to follow the car's progress, a wave of dark beaks and glittering eyes tracking from one end of the loop to the other. Even more unsettling is their number. They are always there, in the same positions, regardless of the season or time of day. They are a permanent feature of the landscape, as fixed as the trees themselves. But the true mystery of Raven Loop Road reveals itself after sunset. When the last light fades and the physical ravens presumably take flight to their roosts. Their presence does not entirely leave. On nights when the moon is bright. Or when a car's headlights sweep across the asphalt. Long, distinct shadows stretch across the road. These are the silhouettes of large birds. Wings sometimes outstretched, cast from the trees onto the pavement below. The problem is, there are no birds in the trees to cast them. The shadows move independently of any light source, flowing across the road in a slow, silent procession that mirrors the path of the daytime ravens. They are darker than the surrounding night, voids in the moonlight, and they pass over the car and driver like cold, silent tides. The history of this stretch of road is a somber one. Decades ago, before the modern highway was cut through the mountain, this was the site of a devastating rockslide. A section of the old cliffside road gave way during a storm, sending several cars into the gorge below. The recovery operation was long and difficult, and the ravens, carrion birds by nature, gathered in great numbers in the trees above the wreckage. They became a grim fixture for the workers below. After the road was rebuilt at great expense, rerouted slightly but still tracing the same deadly contour. They transitioned from spectators of tragedy to sentinels of the pass. Modern explanations falter. Ornithologists confirm the behavior is highly anomalous. Ravens are social, intelligent, and mobile, such a static, permanent gathering defies their nature. Some suggest a mineral seep in the cliff face, or a particular insect bloom, but no such attractant has been found. The shadows are even more perplexing. They have been photographed and filmed, appearing as crisp, black shapes. Laser pointers and light beams pass through the space where the shadows originate, revealing nothing. They are a purely visual phenomenon, a two-dimensional memory imprinted on the air itself. To drive Raven Loop Road, day or night, is to pass through a gallery of witnesses. The daytime silence of the birds is heavier than any noise. Their collective gaze feels like a judgment, or an assessment, from creatures that have seen the cost of mistakes in this place. At night, the experience becomes surreal. Your headlights illuminate the road ahead, and suddenly, the shadows of absent birds slide over your hood, across your windshield, and into the darkness behind you. There is no sound, only the visual echo of their presence. It is not a haunting of people, but of observation itself. The ravens and their lingering shadows are not agents of harm, but custodians of memory. They mark the spot where the mountain fell, and where lives were lost. They are a living, and then a spectral, monument to that moment. They do not threaten, they remind. They are the eyes of the gorge, forever watching the road. Forever watching the road. Ensuring that no one who passes through can ever forget the steep drop just beyond. The quiet, attentive presence that has stood witness here since the day the stone gave way, and the world fell silent, save for the beating of dark wings. On a high mountain pass, where the air grows thin and the clouds drift like ghosts below the tree-line, there is a stretch of asphalt known as drop-off road. It is a necessary switchback, a sharp, hairpin turn carved into the side of a granite peak. A standard guardrail, painted a fading yellow, runs along its outer edge. By all objective measures, it is a dramatic but manageable piece of engineering. Yet, for those who navigate it, objective measure seems to fall away, replaced by a deep, perceptual unease. The first and most famous anomaly is the view from the driver's seat. As you approach the bend and look out toward the guardrail, you do not see a valley floor, a river, or even a dramatic cliff face. You see nothing. It is not fog, though mist often gathers there. It is an absolute absence of visual information, a pure and empty drop that the eye cannot scale or comprehend. It feels less like looking at a landscape and more like staring into the sky, but downward. But downward. This visual paradox is the road's defining feature, a missing piece of the world. A missing piece of the world. This unsettling view triggers the second, more visceral phenomenon. Drivers report a distinct physical sensation, a feeling not of fear of the edge, but of a subtle, magnetic pull toward it. It is not an external force, but an internal urging, a quiet, hypnotic suggestion that the simplest solution to the tension of the turn would be to steer just a few degrees to the right, to merge with the emptiness. A cold focus settles in. The body becomes aware of its own mass, feeling the gravity of the unseen chasm as a tangible invitation. It is the call of the void, made palpable and personal. Then comes the third, and perhaps most bizarre, effect. If a driver tears their gaze from the void and looks back at the road itself, a new distortion occurs. Some swear the asphalt begins to narrow. The solid, painted lines defining the lane seem to constrict. The shoulder shrinking perceptibly, as if the mountain itself is drawing in a breath. The more intently one stares, trying to anchor themselves to the tangible surface, the more it seems to recede or diminish, amplifying the sense of being on a dissolving ribbon over an infinite fall. Looking away, then back, often resets the perception, but the fleeting impression remains. A betrayal of one's basic trust in the solidity of the path. Geologists have surveyed the area extensively. The drop is indeed severe, but it is not bottomless. It ends in a steep scree slope several hundred feet below, obscured by a persistent, localized weather inversion. And the angle of the road. The science, however, does nothing to dispel the experience. The phenomenon is not about what is there, but what the mind cannot process. Psychologists specializing in perception suggest drop-off road is a perfect storm of environmental triggers. The sudden loss of visual reference points creates a form of sensory deprivation. The brain, desperate for data, becomes hyper-focused on the remaining stimuli. The slight gravitational pull of the turn, the natural anxiety of height, into profound physical sensations. The apparent narrowing of the road could be a form of tunnel vision. A stress response triggered by the primal fear of the unseen drop. Yet, local history adds a layer of narrative. Old trail maps indicate this was the site of a notorious rockslide in the wagon road days. A section of the trail gave way, taking several wagons with it. Survivors' accounts speak not of a tumble down a slope, but of vanishing into a cloud, with no sound of impact ever heard. This story, woven into the local consciousness, may prime the mind for the legend of the bottomless drop, enhancing the psychological effect. To drive drop-off road is to engage in a silent battle of perception. The road challenges the fundamental trust between sight and reality, between the body's sense of balance and the mind's understanding of space. It is not haunted by a ghost, but by a geometric and sensory illusion so powerful it feels supernatural. The pull is the mind's curiosity weaponized. The narrowing road is its desperate search for a safe focal point. The lesson of drop-off road is one of cognitive vulnerability. And into that vacuum rush our deepest instincts. But to understand the unsettling magnetism of the unseen. On the old coastal highway, where the road clings to the cliffs above a restless sea, there is a notorious bend known as Lantern Curve. By day, it is simply a beautiful, if treacherous, piece of engineering, offering stunning vistas of the ocean below. But after midnight, the curve takes on a different character. The modern sodium vapor lamps that line the highway seem to falter here, their light growing dim and yellowish, as if struggling against a deeper darkness. It is in this dim stretch that the additional lights appear. They are not electric. They are the warm, smoky glow of lanterns, the kind that burn oil and are protected by glass. They materialize near the cliffside edge of the road, one or two at first, then sometimes as many as half a dozen. They hang in the air at about waist height, and they sway with a gentle, rhythmic motion, the exact movement of a lantern being carried by a walking person. They cast a small, dancing pool of light on the asphalt, illuminating nothing but the ground itself. The instinct for a driver is to slow down, to avoid what appears to be a pedestrian or a group of them walking perilously close to the edge. The lanterns keep a steady pace, just ahead of the vehicle, always rounding the curve. They are impossible to catch up to, yet they never pull too far ahead. They feel like a guide, a procession of silent, luminous companions leading the way through the night. This is the danger of lantern curve. For those who yield to curiosity, or a misplaced sense of caution, or choose to follow the lights at their own sedate pace, the road begins to change. The familiar guardrails seem older, more corroded. The pavement feels rougher. The modern lamps fade away entirely, leaving only the swaying lantern glow. They have been led onto one of the abandoned service roads, or worse, onto forgotten cliffside tracks that have not been maintained for 50 years. Only when the lantern light suddenly winks out, leaving them in utter blackness on a crumbling road with the sound of the sea far below, do they understand they are hopelessly lost. A traffic safety investigator named Lena was assigned to review a cluster of single-vehicle incidents near Lantern Curve. The drivers all told similar, bewildering stories of following lanterns. Her job was to find a rational cause, perhaps glare from buoy lights, or a peculiar refraction from the sea mist. She decided to experience the curve for herself, alone, after midnight. The change in the ambient light was the first sign. The modern lamps dimmed, as if on a faulty circuit. Then, ahead of her, a single golden point of light coalesced. It swayed, patiently, just beyond her headlights. A second appeared farther ahead. Their motion was hypnotic, organic. She felt a powerful, almost magnetic pull to slow her car and follow their pace. Fighting her professional detachment, she pushed harder on the accelerator, aiming to pass the nearest light. As she drew alongside it, the lantern glow did not vanish. It simply moved, floating laterally across the road until it was again ahead of her, as if it had taken a shortcut through the cliffside itself. A cold thrill passed through her. This was no reflection. It was responsive. She stopped her car. The lanterns ahead also stopped, swaying gently in place, waiting. She put the car in reverse and carefully backed around the bend until the modern streetlights regained their strength. The lanterns faded, not like a light turning off, but like a figure walking around a corner out of sight. Lena's investigation shifted from accident reports to historical archives. She discovered that before the modern highway was cut, a narrow footpath traced the cliff edge. Used by lighthouse keepers and coast watchers. On foggy nights, they would walk this path with lanterns, checking markers and watching for ships in distress. The path is gone now, buried under tons of fill or lost to erosion. But their route, it seems, is not forgotten. Lena authored the official report citing driver fatigue and optical illusions caused by sea mist. Her private conclusion was different. The lantern curve lights are not malevolent. They are dutiful. They are following their old patrol route, a path that no longer exists in the physical world, but is etched in the memory of the place. When a car follows them, it is temporarily shifted onto the ghost of that path. The road literally changes beneath the wheels, because the driver is no longer on the modern highway, but tracing an ancient, invisible trail. Lena now knows why the local people never slow down on that curve at night. They speed up. They look straight ahead. They do not acknowledge the gentle, swaying lights at the edge of their vision. For to see them is to be seen, and to be seen is to be invited to follow. And the keepers of the old path are always walking, leading the way on a route that only they remember. A journey that always, inevitably, leads away from where you intended to go. On the high mountain road known as Pine Widow Pass, there is a simple wooden cross. It stands just beyond the guardrail, where the asphalt gives way to a steep, pine-covered slope. The cross is weathered gray, its arms lashed together with wire. No name is carved into it, no date, no flowers adorn its base. It is a silent sentinel at the edge of a long, sweeping curve. For most who drive this scenic route, the cross is a fleeting blur, a momentary footnote in a landscape of breathtaking vistas. But for some, the marker is the beginning of an experience that defies easy explanation. It often starts with the radio. As a car approaches the curve, clear music or talk will dissolve into a burst of pure, white static. It is a sudden, total signal loss, as if the vehicle has passed into a dead zone of perfect silence. The static hisses, empty and urgent, for the duration of the curve. Then, just as abruptly, the station will return, picking up mid-song as if nothing had happened. This electronic phenomenon is consistent, replicable, and deeply puzzling. Yet it is the secondary effect that leaves a deeper impression. Some drivers, traveling alone or with passengers asleep, report hearing a voice within the static. Not a broadcast voice, but something closer, more intimate. It is the soft, murmuring sound of a woman whispering. The words are indistinct, but the rhythm is unmistakable. It is the cadence of a prayer, a repetitive, soothing, and sorrowful litany. The experience is never visual. No figure appears by the roadside. The cross remains still. But the feeling of a presence is profound, a dense, poignant atmosphere that seems to fill the car for those few seconds on the curve. It is not a feeling of danger, but of a deep, enduring sadness, mixed with a strange, protective grace. The history of the pass provides a possible anchor for the story. In the early days of the road, when it was little more than a dirt track, a young lodger's wife lived in a cabin near this curve. Her husband's crew worked the opposite slope, and each evening she would watch from this very bend for the sight of his truck rounding the distant turn. One winter evening, a slide of rock and snow swept down the mountain, blocking the road miles below. Her husband's truck never appeared. For 3 nights, in a fierce storm, she kept a lantern burning in her window. And walked out to this point, whispering prayers into the wind. For his safe return, unable to know the road was already impassable. When the weather cleared and word finally reached her, she simply left. The cabin fell into ruin. But someone, perhaps a member of that logging crew, later placed the cross at her vigil point. The phenomenon may be a kind of emotional resonance, a moment trapped in time. The static on the radio could be an analog for the howling storm that drowned out all other sound on those nights. The whispered prayer is not a ghostly attempt to communicate, but a lingering imprint of profound hope and devotion, a signal of love that was broadcast with such intensity that it forever altered the fabric of that small place. Others suggest a more modern interpretation. That the cross acts as an unconscious trigger, a symbol that prepares the mind for a story. The static is a real but unexplained interference, and the whispering is a trick of the mind, a pattern found in the random noise, much like seeing shapes in clouds. Yet this rational explanation falters in the face of so many independent, identical reports. The specific cadence of a prayer, heard not as words, but as emotion. Travelers who have felt it often speak of it quietly. They do not describe fear, but a sense of being momentarily weighed down by a grief not their own. Followed by a curious lightness after passing the curve. Some, moved by an impulse they do not fully understand, will sometimes add a small stone to the base of the cross. A silent gesture of acknowledgement. So the cross remains, a nameless marker on a beautiful road. It does not warn of danger, but marks a site of unwavering watchfulness. The static still comes, a wall of silent noise. And within it, for those who listen closely on a quiet night drive, the air itself may seem to murmur with a century-old hope. A whispered prayer for a safe return that still hangs in the pines, forever waiting for an answer that never comes. On the steep descent of the old mining highway, there is a sharp, unassuming curve known as Broken Axle Turn. The road itself is well maintained now, with clear signage and a sturdy guardrail, a testament to modern engineering. But the geography remains unforgiving. The turn hugs the mountainside, and on the passenger side, the land falls away into a deep, wooded ravine, a shadowy cleft that seems to swallow the daylight. The phenomenon here is not visual, but entirely auditory. It begins the moment a vehicle navigates the bend. A horrifying sound rises from the depths of the ravine below. It is the sound of tortured metal, a long, drawn-out screech, as if a heavy vehicle is sliding sideways, its frame grinding against rock. This is followed immediately by a series of crashes, the unmistakable, chaotic symphony of breaking glass, twisting steel, and splintering wood. The sounds are crisp, immediate, and spatially coherent, seeming to originate from a point directly down the slope, just out of sight. They are the sounds of a violent, total accident. The instinct for any driver is to brake, to pull over, to call for help. But when they look down into the ravine, they see nothing. No wreckage, no smoke, no movement. Only the peaceful, sun-dappled forest or the quiet, moonlit trees. The most perplexing part, however, is what happens next. As drivers continue their journey, leaving Broken Axle Turn miles behind them, the sounds do not always fade. Many report hearing the distant, faint echoes of the same crash sequence minutes, even tens of minutes later. It replays in their ears, or seems to drift from the forest alongside the road, a phantom accident following them down the mountain, its auditory aftermath stretching far beyond the laws of physics. This stretch of road was, in the era of wagons and early trucks, a notorious bottleneck. The turn was tighter, the road was dirt, and the grade was steeper. Heavily laden wagons, particularly those carrying ore from the played-out mines higher up, would often suffer catastrophic mechanical failures here. A broken axle, a snapped wheel, could send a wagon careening over the edge. The ravine below was a natural recovery yard, a final resting place for shattered wood and bent iron. Most wrecks were recovered, but the echoes of those moments, the last sounds heard by the drivers as they lost control, seem to have lingered. Modern attempts to record or explain the sounds have yielded strange results. Highly sensitive directional microphones set up at the curve have captured what sound engineers call an acoustic imprint. The screech and crash sequence is recorded, but analysis shows it is not a single event. It is a composite, a layered audio file made up of many similar, but subtly different, impacts and scrapes. It is as if the ravine is replaying not one crash, but the essence of dozens that occurred over decades. Furthermore, the sound does not behave naturally. It does not diminish with distance at a constant rate. It persists, fading in and out of audibility for certain listeners long after they have left the area, suggesting a psychological or perceptual component that is triggered by the initial, undeniable sonic event. To drive a broken axle is to pass through an acoustic trapdoor. One moment you are listening to your engine and the radio, the next, you are auditorily thrust into the heart of a disaster that isn't there. The dissonance between the peaceful scenery and the violent soundscape is profoundly jarring. The experience does not end when the curve is behind you. The lingering echoes, whether real or remembered, force a contemplation of the road's history. Every squeal of your own brakes, every bump on the pavement, becomes a potential trigger, a reminder of the sound waiting back at the turn. It is a haunting not of a soul, but of an event, or rather, of a type of event. The ravine does not remember the people, but the moment of structural failure. It holds the sound of the axle snapping, the wheel buckling, the final, irrevocable loss of control. And on some days, for some drivers, it releases that sound, not as a warning, but as a broadcast. A replay of a tragedy that has happened countless times, ensuring that even those who navigate the turn safely are made to hear the cost of failure. An echo that follows them long after the danger has passed. There is a stretch of woodland highway, a straight and shaded mile between two hills, known locally as Hollow Breath Road. By all topographic maps, it is unremarkable. Yet, every driver who passes through it, without exception, experiences the same visceral, chilling phenomenon. It happens with the consistency of a natural law. On the hottest summer day, when the air shimmers over the asphalt elsewhere, the temperature plummets the moment your vehicle enters this specific quarter-mile. It is not a gentle coolness, but a wave of profound, subterranean cold that washes across the road, carrying with it the clean, mineral scent of deep earth and stone. Utterly alien to the surrounding forest-s smell of pine and warm soil. Car thermometers have been known to drop 10 degrees in as many seconds. The first visible effect is on the glass. The windows of the vehicle, both inside and out, fog instantly. A thick, milky condensation blooms across the windshield and side windows, as if the car has been plunged into a freezer. The defroster struggles against it. Wipers smear the moisture on the outside into useless streaks. For a few disorienting seconds, the driver is effectively blinded, forced to slow to a crawl, peering through a shrinking clear patch on the glass, the world outside reduced to vague, shimmering shapes in the sudden, frigid haze. It is during this moment of isolated, chilled blindness that the most personal sensation occurs. Drivers, and often passengers sitting in the back, report a distinct feeling on the back of their neck. It is the unmistakable sensation of a slow, deliberate breath. A faint, moist exhalation against the skin, as if someone is leaning forward from the rear seat, sighing just behind the ear. The air is already cold, but this breath feels colder, more focused, and intimately close. It is frequently accompanied by a prickling of the scalp and a surge of adrenaline. That has nothing to do with the obscured road ahead. By the time the windows begin to clear and the car exits the cold zone, returning abruptly to the summer heat, the sensation has faded, leaving behind only goosebumps and a deep, unnerving certainty that for a moment, they were not alone. Geologists have surveyed the area, finding a network of small limestone caves and fissures deep beneath the roadbed. They theorize that the cold air is a simple physical anomaly, a natural air conditioning effect where air cooled in deep underground chambers is forced to the surface through cracks in the bedrock. Flooding the road cut. The rapid fogging is a logical result of warm, moist summer air hitting a sudden, concentrated plume of this cold. But the sensation of breath defies such explanation. Historians, piecing together old stagecoach diaries and local archives, found a recurring mention of this stretch from the late 1800s. It was then a narrow dirt track, and the records tell of a reclusive trapper named Ezekiel Crane who used the caves beneath as a root cellar and shelter. He was known as a lonely, silent man who lived deep in the woods. He was found one winter, having succumbed to illness in his cabin. The diary of the man who found him notes, with morbid detail, how the cold in the humble cabin felt deeper than the winter outside, and how the man's last breath seemed to hang in the air like a cloud. This historical fragment suggests a convergence. The physical anomaly of the cold air creates a perfect stage. The psychological disorientation of the sudden chill and blinding fog primes the mind for suggestion. And the story of a lonely man's last, trapped breath in the cold may provide a narrative shape for the mind to grasp in that vulnerable moment. The sensation on the neck could be a form of tactile hallucination, a brain interpreting a specific pattern of that cold, moist air moving through the cabin of the car as something intimately human. Hollow Breath Road is, therefore, a masterpiece of atmospheric suggestion. The cold is real. The fog is real. The mind, isolated in its metal box and robbed of its senses for a few seconds, completes the picture with a primal, personal touch. It is a place where geology and psychology meet. Where a natural vent in the earth exhales a coldness so sudden and complete that it carries with it the ghost of a story. And perhaps, for a shivering second, the feeling of a presence sharing that confined, chilled space. Breathing a secret onto your skin before the world returns to warm, solid, and lonely normalcy. And perhaps, for a shivering second, the feeling of a presence sharing that confined, chilled space. Breathing a secret onto your skin before the world returns to warm, solid, and lonely normalcy. It is a place where geology and psychology meet. There is a stretch of road known to locals by a simple, ominous name. For those who live in the foothills, it is a direct, if nerve-wracking, route to the high meadows. A place where the darkness seems to have a life of its own, and the trees seem to lean in, as if listening. The trouble begins subtly. A driver unfamiliar with the area will enter the switchbacks, concentrating on the sharp turns. After several minutes of climbing, a sense of disquiet sets in. The forest looks the same, the light through the trees feels constant. Then comes the first marker. A specific, massive pine tree, long dead, its trunk split by lightning, lies across a rocky outcrop just off the road. It is a memorable landmark. The driver rounds another bend, and there it is again. The same tree, the same angle, the same splash of orange lichen on its bark. This is impossible. The road is climbing, not looping. Yet, there it is. The fallen tree appears a third time, and a fourth. The road seems to be coiling back on itself like a serpent, trapping the vehicle in a MA with tilde paragraph bias strip of asphalt and pine. Panic begins to set in. They slow to a crawl, studying the undergrowth, and still, the tree reappears. It is an inescapable signpost in a loop with no exit. Concurrent with this spatial confusion is a more visceral distress. The vehicle's fuel gauge, reliably accurate just moments before, begins to fall with alarming speed. A quarter tank vanishes in what feels like a mile. The needle continues to drop, as if the engine is guzzling fuel at a catastrophic rate. Or as if the distance being traveled is far greater than the odometer can register. The combination of the looping scenery and the draining gas creates a potent, claustrophobic terror. The forest ceases to feel like a place, and becomes a system, a trap that consumes both direction and fuel. A cartographer named Silas was hired to verify the accuracy of trail maps in the region. He was a man of precision, trusting in compasses and satellite data. He heard the stories of the switchback and dismissed them as the result of poor navigation. To prove his point, he drove the road at noon. With multiple GPS units logging his route. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. His GPS showed him moving forward on a linear path, but his eyes showed him the undeniable, identical landmark. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. His GPS showed him moving forward on a linear path, but his eyes showed him the undeniable, identical landmark. He checked his fuel. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. His GPS showed him moving forward on a linear path, but his eyes showed him the undeniable, identical landmark. He checked his fuel. It had dropped from half to just above empty in a span of 2 miles. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. His GPS showed him moving forward on a linear path, but his eyes showed him the undeniable, identical landmark. He checked his fuel. It had dropped from half to just above empty in a span of 2 miles. His logical mind short-circuited. The first pass was uneventful. The second, he decided to take more detailed notes. He saw the fallen tree, noted its coordinates, and continued upward. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. His GPS showed him moving forward on a linear path, but his eyes showed him the undeniable, identical landmark. He checked his fuel. It had dropped from half to just above empty in a span of 2 miles. His logical mind short-circuited. Data and reality were in direct conflict. He stopped the car, got out, and walked to the fallen tree. He placed his hand on the cool, damp bark of the trunk. It was real, solid, and exactly as he remembered. He drove forward slowly, watching the tree in his mirror until the bend took it from view. When it appeared ahead of him once more, he felt a deep, existential dizziness. He was not lost. He was stuck. He did the only thing the locals had advised in their vague warnings. He put the car in reverse. He backed down the mountain, around the bends, never taking his eyes off the road behind him. After several tense minutes, the forest changed. The light shifted. He was at the base of the switchback again, his fuel gauge mysteriously back to half a tank. Silas spent weeks researching. He found no records of accidents, no tales of tragedy. He did find old surveyor notes mentioning a peculiar magnetic anomaly on that slope, a place where compasses would spin lazily. The modern explanation, he theorized, was incomplete. The switchback of no return, he believes, exists in a mild spatial fold. The intense geological pressures that created the mountain may have left a kink, not in the rock, but in the fabric of the space itself. The road crosses this fold. Traveling forward engages it, creating a short, localized loop. Where distance is stretched and fuel is consumed not by the engine, but by the act of traversing warped space. The fallen tree is not repeating. The driver is passing the same point in nonlinear space, again and again. Silas updated his maps with a simple, bold warning advising against using that route. He never wrote his theory in an official document. Some truths undermine the very maps we trust. He now understands the calm certainty of the locals. They do not fear the switchback because they know the secret. You must never question the loop. The only way out is to reverse, to literally back away from the anomaly. To reset the geometry. The road is not cursed. It is simply broken in a way that defies forward momentum. And in those woods, the most important navigation skill is knowing when going backward is the only way to move forward. The road known as Moon-Drop Curve is not marked on most maps. It is a stretch of black asphalt that winds through old hills, cloaked in pine and silence by day. But on the nights when the moon swells to its fullest, this road reveals its secret. Here, shadows move independently of the trees. For decades, locals have spoken of it in hushed tones at diner counters and gas stations. They detach. Their forms long and indistinct. One frequent traveler, a long-haul trucker named Leo, knew the stories. He considered them just that, stories, born from tired eyes and the strange effects of lunar light. He had driven Moon Drop Curve 100 times, by sun and by storm, and had seen nothing out of the ordinary. Until one October night. The moon was a perfect white coin, so bright it bleached the color from the world. As Leo's truck approached the famous bend, he felt a familiar prickle of anticipation, mixed with a new and unwelcome sense of unease. The pine shadows lay across the road like black bars. He slowed his rig, his eyes scanning the woods. At first, he saw nothing but the natural sway of branches. Then he perceived a deeper movement within the darkness. A shadow at the edge of the road, one that belonged to a tall pine, began to shift. It did not follow the tree's gentle rustle. Instead, it thickened, elongated, and stepped forward onto the asphalt. Leo's foot hovered over the brake. The shape was manlike but fluid, a silhouette cut from pure absence. It paused in the center of his headlights. And for a moment, Leo felt a profound stillness, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the shadow dissolved into the silver light, seeming not to vanish, but to walk directly into the solid rock of the hillside. He pulled his truck to the gravel shoulder, heart drumming against his ribs. He waited, watching. Over the next hour, he saw it twice more. Different shadows, from different trees, would step onto the road with a curious, almost tentative gait. They would linger for only a few seconds before turning and melting seamlessly into the earth of the hillside, as if a door had opened and closed for them. Leo was not the only witness. Over the years, a pattern emerged from the scattered accounts. The phenomena only occur on nights of the full moon. And only when the lunar light hits the curve at a specific angle. The shadows are never aggressive. They do not approach vehicles. They simply emerge, cross, and disappear into the hill. Scientists and skeptics have offered explanations. They speak of rare atmospheric conditions, of the Brocken specter, a weather phenomenon where a magnified shadow is cast onto fog. They cite the complexities of human perception in low light. Yet no fog is reported on these clear, cold nights. The events are too consistent, too structured, to be easily dismissed. Some researchers propose a more geological theory. The hillside is rich in a certain type of magnetic iron ore. They speculate that under the intense gravitational pull of the full moon, combined with the unique lunar illumination, a temporaria recordinga might be activated. A replay of sorts, not of light, but of darkness. Shadows of what, or whom, no one can say. Others whisper of older ideas. They suggest that on these nights, the veil between what is and what was becomes thin. That the shadows are not cast by the present trees, but are echoes of travelers from another time, following a path that no longer exists, a path that now lies within the mountain itself. To drive Moon Drop Curve on a full moon night is to participate in a silent ritual. You do not come for confrontation, but for observation. The air grows cooler. The sounds of the forest dampen. You watch the bands of shadow and light, waiting for the moment when one decides to step free of its source. It is a reminder that our world is not fully explained. That there are places where the rules soften, where light behaves as liquid and darkness gains agency. Where the shadows do not speak, they do not threaten. They simply are. Brief, silent figures on an empty road, completing a journey whose purpose and destination remain mercifully, and eternally, obscure. And the moon, impartial and bright, continues its slow arc across the sky, holding the secret until its next appointed hour. Singing Ravine Road is a 2-mile stretch of highway carved into the side of a deep, narrow canyon. The road itself is an engineering marvel, a shelf of concrete suspended above a steep drop into a shadowy cleft filled with pine and spruce. The views are breathtaking, but it is the sound that defines the place. When the wind is still and traffic is sparse, a low humming rises from the depths of the ravine. It is not a mechanical drone, but an organic, resonant tone, almost musical in its quality. It holds a faint, shifting harmonic, like a distant, wordless choir singing a single, sustained note into the stone. The sound is beautiful at first, a curious natural phenomenon. It seems to vibrate up through the roadbed and into the frame of a vehicle. Drivers often roll down their windows to listen, intrigued by the unearthly melody rising from below. But those who stop their cars and linger at one of the small pull-offs to listen more closely soon discover the phenomenon's disquieting effect. The longer one listens, the more the sound seems to seep into the mind. A subtle dizziness begins, a lightheadedness that has nothing to do with the altitude. This escalates into a tangible confusion, a difficulty focusing on simple thoughts or remembering why you stopped. Time feels sluggish and distorted. The beautiful hum starts to feel intrusive, as if it is not just a sound you are hearing, but one that is actively listening back, creating a feedback loop within your own perception. The ravine has a geological history that provides a clue. It was formed by a prehistoric river that cut through a unique formation of sedimentary rock, leaving behind sheer walls of layered sandstone and a softer, crystalline shale. Geologists confirm that such formations can act as giant natural resonators, amplifying specific frequencies generated by subterranean water flows, shifting rock, or even the pressure of the earth itself. The musical quality is likely the result of these frequencies interacting within the ravine's specific shape, a massive, accidental sound chamber. Human history adds another layer. Long before the road was built, the ravine was considered a sacred, and forbidden, place by the indigenous peoples of the region. It was known as a place of spirits, not of the dead, but of the earth itself. Oral tradition spoke of a song that rose from the stones, a song that was not meant for human ears. It was said that to listen to it for too long was to forget your way, both on the path and in your mind, as the song sought to pull your spirit into alignment with the slow, ancient rhythms of the stone. Prolonged exposure was believed to cause a sickness of disconnection from the living world. Modern investigations have measured the phenomenon but struggle to explain its psychological impact. Audio recordings capture the hum, which oscillates at a very low frequency, between 15 and 20 Hz. This is at the lower threshold of human hearing, in the range known as infrasound. Scientific studies have shown that sustained exposure to certain infrasonic frequencies can indeed induce feelings of dizziness, anxiety, and spatial disorientation, as they interact with the vestibular system of the inner ear and resonate with the human body. The ravine, in effect, is generating a natural, powerful infrasound field. Yet, the experience feels more profound than a simple physiological reaction. The musicality, the harmonic complexity, suggests an intelligence of pattern, even if it is a non-sentient, geological intelligence. The pull-offs along the road, while scenic, are often littered with personal items, forgotten by disoriented visitors, a testament to the hum's distracting power. To travel Singing Ravine Road is to pass through an active auditory landscape. You are not just hearing a sound, you are being physically and mentally immersed in a vibration born from the mountain. The initial beauty is a lure, an invitation to pause and appreciate one of nature's oddities. But the ravine does not give its song freely. It asks for a price in focus and equilibrium. It is a place that reminds us that the earth is not silent, and some of its songs, composed over millennia of pressure and erosion, are tuned to frequencies that can unravel the delicate balance of a human mind, offering a dizzying glimpse into the deep, resonant, and utterly alien consciousness of the planet itself. On a remote Forest Service road, where the pines grow thick and the asphalt is patched with gravel, there is a sharp, descending curve known as Burnt Cabin Bend. A century ago, a small homesteader's cabin stood in a clearing just off the inside of this turn. It was the home of a woodcarver named Elias, a man who sought quiet and found a tragedy. One autumn night, a fire, likely sparked by an overturned lantern, consumed the wooden structure utterly. All that remained was a stone chimney and a foundation, which have long since been reclaimed by moss and fern. The road was rerouted slightly over the years, but the bend kept its name, and more importantly, its atmosphere. The first sign is olfactory. Long before you see the curve, often on a still, damp evening, the smell reaches you. It is not the pleasant scent of a campfire. It is the acrid, unmistakable odor of wet smoke, of charred timber that has been doused. It carries a hint of old, burned pitch from the pine logs, a scent that feels ingrained in the air itself. The smell comes in waves, strongest at the exact point on the road opposite where the cabin's front door once stood. You can drive through it in seconds, but the impression lingers in the car's interior, a ghostly passenger of scent. But it is after true dark falls that the bend reveals its more visual haunting. If you stop your car and look into the woods where the cabin once was, you will see, not a glow, but flickers. Small, darting tongues of orange light that seem to dance between the black trunks of the trees. They are low to the ground, at the height a cabin's windows would have been. They pulse and vanish, reappearing a few feet away, never coalescing into a defined shape or flame. They cast no light on the surrounding ferns or stones. They are pure, spectral illumination, like the memory of fire playing on the inside of your eyelids. They are most visible from the corner of your eye, often disappearing when stared at directly, only to dance again in the periphery. The history, drawn from scattered county records and a single surviving diary in a regional archive, tells a sparse story. Elias the woodcarver was a solitary man, but not a hermit. He traded his carvings in the distant town for supplies. His diary entries speak of his love for the quiet of the woods, and his fear of the very isolation that he cherished. The final entry, dated the day before the fire, mentions a deep melancholy and a lantern that had been flickering unevenly. The official report concluded the fire was an accident. No remains were formally identified, as the heat was too intense. This unresolved conclusion seems to have left a mark on the location. Paranormal researchers suggest that traumatic, energy-intensive events like fire can leave a strong sensory imprint. The smell of wet smoke is a common phantom odor associated with such hauntings, perhaps a lingering chemical signature somehow trapped in the mineral content of the soil or the resin of the surrounding trees. The flickering lights are more complex. They could be a form of earth light, generated by piezoelectric stress in the quartz-rich rock of the area, though their consistent location and behavior argue against random geology. A more compelling theory is that they represent a residual imprint of the fire's last moments, a playback of the frantic, dancing light that was the final thing Elias, and the forest itself, witnessed in that clearing. They are not the fire itself, but its shadow, its frantic, dying light. To experience Burnt Cabin Bend is to engage with a memory made of scent and elusive light. There is no figure, no sound of crackling timber. The haunting is environmental, a stain on the senses. The smell of damp ash evokes the aftermath. The flickering orange light recalls the event. Together, they create a poignant, unsettling diorama of loss. The bend tells a story of fragile sanctuary. The phenomena are not menacing, but mournful. They speak of a life and a home reduced to its most basic sensory components, smell and light. Forever lingering at the curve in the road, a reminder that even in the deepest quiet, an ending can be sudden and bright. And that some clearings in the woods are never truly empty, but filled with the invisible, smoking ghost of a home that once was. In the flat, grid-like farm country, where roads run straight for miles under a vast sky, there is a single, anomalous corridor known as Crooked Marker Road. It is a necessary throughway, connecting two counties, and by day it appears perfectly ordinary. The fields of corn and soybean stretch away from its shoulders in neat, geometric blocks. But as dusk falls, and especially during the long hours of the night, the the road reveals its peculiar affliction. They are standard-issue green and white road signs, erected by the county decades ago. Yet they do not sit right. The posts are not leaning from soil erosion. The signs themselves are twisted, as if the metal face has been warped by a tremendous, localized heat. Arrows curve subtly in the wrong direction. Town names are stretched into illegible smears. The word stop on a lonely intersection sign might be coiled into a near spiral. This distortion is constant, a permanent disfigurement. But the second phenomenon is conditional. When a car's headlights sweep across these signs, something unpredictable occurs. Sometimes the light reflects normally, illuminating the warped text. Other times, for a single, gut-dropping instant, the sign goes utterly blank. This blankness lasts only as long as the headlights are directly upon it, but the effect is deeply unsettling. It is the visual equivalent of a word forgotten on the tip of your tongue. The consequence for drivers is not physical danger, but a profound and insidious disorientation. A deep-seated confusion about direction takes root. North feels like it is behind you. East feels like it is down. The clear mental map every driver relies on begins to dissolve. Landmarks seem misplaced. The straight road begins to feel like it is curving, even when the steering wheel is held perfectly straight. This is not mere dizziness. It is a total breakdown of navigational sense. People have pulled over, certain they were heading south, only to find their compasses insisting they were pointing west. A materials engineer named Anya was contracted by the county to investigate the failing signs. The complaints were always vague, citing driver confusion, but the maintenance reports noted only physical warping. She arrived at sunset with a toolkit and spectrometer, intending to take samples of the metal and reflective sheeting. She examined the first sign, a mileage marker. Its post was true, but the sign itself was bent into a soft, impossible curve, like a piece of taffy. Her instruments detected no unusual alloys, no magnetic anomalies. As night fell, she returned to her truck to review the data. Turning the key, her headlights flared to life, striking the warped sign. It went blank. Not dark, but empty. A perfect, non-reflective void where numbers should have been. The warped numbers reappeared, faintly visible in the twilight. She turned the lights on again. Blank. A chill that had nothing to do with the evening air crept down her spine. This was not a material failure. It was a conditional one. Deciding to experience the road as a driver, she began a slow patrol. Each time her lights hit a sign, she braced for the blankness. Sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. After the fifth sign, a deep unease settled in her stomach. She glanced at her digital compass on the dashboard. It spun lazily, then settled on a direction that contradicted every instinct in her body. She knew, intellectually, her home was east. Every fiber of her perception screamed that east was now to her left, behind the fields, not ahead down the road. She pulled over, breathing deeply, until the feeling passed. Her historical research provided a clue, not an answer. Crooked Marker Road was built atop an ancient boundary line. A disputed border between two tribal nations. Marked not by posts but by cairns that were moved according to celestial observations. The line was fluid, not fixed. Anya's final report recommended replacing all signage with non-reflective, matte finish placards. Her private theory was more profound. She believed the road sat on a locus of contested geography. The land itself remembered being unmapped, of having a border that was a suggestion, not a line. The warping of the signs was a physical manifestation of that old, fluid boundary. The blanking effect was a reset, a momentary reversion to a state of having no marker, no direction. The disorientation felt by drivers was not psychological. It was geographical. They were momentarily feeling the landscape as it once was, unmoored from the cardinal directions. A place where you were going depended not on a sign, but on the season and the stars. The county replaced the signs. The new, matte signs do not go blank. But at night, under certain angles of moonlight, they too appear subtly warped. Anya knows the truth. You cannot fix a place's memory with a new sign. You can only hope to dampen the symptom. Crooked Marker Road will always remember a time before maps, when direction was a living, changing thing. And drivers with a keen sense of direction will always feel a whisper of that old, profound lostness. A reminder that some paths were never meant to be so straight, or so clearly marked. There is a stretch of road that climbs into the mountains, known locally as the Notorious climb. It is a necessary passage, a serpentine route of switchbacks and steep grades that connects the quiet valleys below to the high plateau above. By day, it is a scenic drive, all lush ferns and towering pines. But after sunset, a different set of rules seems to apply. The phenomenon is not constant. It does not happen to every car, or on every night. The conditions seem to favor deep darkness, overcast skies that swallow the moon, and a particular quiet that settles in after the last of the daylight traffic has faded. Drivers begin their ascent, headlights carving tunnels through the blackness. Then, somewhere around the third bend, they see it. A flicker of light, low to the ground, just inside the wall of trees. Then another, a few yards ahead. Pinpricks of a faint, glassy luminescence. They are eyes. Not the familiar, sporadic glow of a deer or a raccoon caught in the beams. These are different. They are set in a rough line, parallel to the road, and they move. They follow cars slowly uphill, keeping a steady, matching pace from within the impenetrable woods. The eyes do not blink. They do not waver. They simply track the vehicle's progress with a chilling, mechanical precision. Stopping makes the feeling worse. This is the unanimous advice from those who have experienced it. The instinct to brake, to try and make sense of the lights, is overwhelming. But those who have yielded to that instinct describe a sudden, profound silence. The engine ticks as it cools. The forest seems to lean in. And the eyes, they stop too. The sense of observation transforms from passive to active. It feels less like being watched, and more like being measured. A woman named Anya, a nurse who works the night shift, encountered them on a rainy Tuesday. Her small sedan labored up the climb, the wipers thumping a steady rhythm. When she turned her head fully, they were there, a silent escort. A cold dread settled in her stomach. Her rational mind argued for owls, for some collective reflection of her own headlights on wet leaves. But the synchronization was perfect. She accelerated, her hands tight on the wheel. The eyes kept up effortlessly. It was only when she crested the summit and the road leveled out that they simply winked out, one by one, as if a curtain had been drawn. Theories about the Notorious climb are numerous. But evidence is scarce. Biologists suggest it could be a colony of a particular bioluminescent fungus, reacting to vibrations or light disturbance. Physicists point to unusual mineral deposits in the rock face, potentially piezoelectrical, generating faint sparks under the pressure of passing vehicles. Yet no scientific expedition has ever captured definitive proof. The eyes do not appear on infrared cameras. They leave no physical trace. There is an older story, seldom told openly. It speaks of the original guardians of these mountains, entities of stone and root that predate human memory. According to this lore, the road was cut through a place of silent vigilance. The watchers, disturbed by the noise and the light, now simply observe the intrusion. They track each vehicle not with malice, but with the cold, patient assessment of a sentry evaluating a potential threat. Their gaze is a reminder that this path is a privilege, not a right. The common wisdom for navigating the climb at night is clear. Maintain a steady, moderate speed. Do not stop. Do not flash your lights or attempt to communicate. Most importantly, do not look for too long. Focus on the road ahead. The eyes, they say, will only follow you for the duration of the ascent. Once you reach the top, they relinquish their pursuit. You are allowed to pass. But the feeling lingers. It settles in the back of your mind, a cold spot of unease. You find yourself checking the rearview mirror more often on dark roads. You notice the depth of the shadows between trees. The Watcher's climb teaches a subtle lesson about perception and territory. It reminds us that some places retain a sense of self, a consciousness that watches back. The mountain knows you are there. And on certain dark nights, from within its ancient, wooded veil, it makes sure you know it is watching too. On the high mountain pass known as the Stone March Highway, there is a curve that has earned a grim and descriptive name, Screaming Curve. The turn is tight, but it is not the geometry that defines it. The road here cuts through a narrow, artificial canyon, a slice blasted through a granite ridge. When the wind blows from the west, which it does with great consistency, it is funneled and compressed through this rocky throat. The result is not a howl or a whistle, but a raw, human-like scream. The scream is unsettling enough, a natural yet disturbing quirk of acoustics. But many who have driven through the curve, particularly at night or during storms when the wind is at its peak, report something more. They claim to hear words, or fragments of words, woven into the fabric of the scream. The descriptions vary, but common threads emerge. Some hear a single, repeated name, like Anna or Daniel. Others report short, desperate phrases, like turn back or help me. Others report simply the word no, elongated and distorted by the gale. But many who have driven through the curve, particularly at night or during storms when the wind is at its peak, report something more. They claim to hear words, or fragments of words, woven into the fabric of the scream. These perceived words are not clear shouts, but impressions, auditory shapes that the mind assembles from the chaotic noise, felt more than heard, and always fading before they can be fully grasped. The history of the curve is etched into the mountain itself. The decision to blast a road through the ridge in the 1930s was controversial. Pitting ambitious engineers against local guides who knew the mountain's moods. During construction, a premature dynamite charge detonated, causing a partial collapse of the cutting wall. While the official record states there were no fatalities, local lore tells a different story. It speaks of a young surveyor named Elias, who was checking the drill lines. The collapse buried him under tons of rubble before he could be pulled out. His final shout, a warning to his crew, was lost in the roar of falling stone. Since the road opened, the screaming wind became a feature. But the stories of words within it began with the very first travelers. They were often dismissed as the product of an overactive imagination, fueled by the already disturbing sound. However, the consistency of the reports, spanning generations and from people with no knowledge of the local tale, is difficult to ignore. The perceived phrases often carry a tone of warning or desperation, echoing the legend of the lost surveyor. The legend of the lost surveyor. The stories of words within it. Scientific analysis provides a partial explanation. The specific dimensions of the cut, the angle of the wind, and the texture of the granite walls create a complex resonant chamber. This chamber doesn't just amplify sound, it shapes it, creating formants and harmonics that mimic the frequency ranges of the human voice. Audio experts confirm that such conditions can produce sounds that the human brain, a pattern-seeking machine, will instinctively try to interpret as speech, a phenomenon known as audio pareidolia, similar to seeing faces in clouds. Yet, for the driver alone in their car, the science offers little comfort. The world darkens. And the scream hits, vibrating through your vehicle's frame. In that moment of primal unease, your mind strains to make sense of the noise. And sometimes, it supplies a meaning. The words feel implanted. A direct communication from the stone and the wind. To navigate screaming curve is to participate in a dialogue with the mountain's memory. The wind provides the voice. The geology provides the vocal cords. And the listener provides the meaning. It is a place where nature's raw mechanics brush up against human psychology and folklore, creating a perfect storm of suggestion. Whether the words are mere illusion, a geological coincidence, or something else, the effect is undeniable. Whether the words are mere illusion, a geological coincidence, or something else, the effect is undeniable. It is a place where nature's raw mechanics brush up against human psychology and folklore, creating a perfect storm of suggestion. Whether the words are mere illusion, a geological coincidence, or something else, the effect is undeniable. To navigate screaming curve is to participate in a dialogue with the mountain's memory. The curve does not just scream, it seems to speak, using the language of trapped air and ancient rock. A warning that has been echoing through the stone for nearly a century. Waiting for every passing year to try, and fail, to understand. On a high mountain pass known as the Stonemont Highway, there is a place called Split Mountain Switch. It is a critical turn, a sharp, climbing bend that winds around a shoulder of granite, offering dizzying views of the valley far below. The road is well marked, with clear signage and a solid guardrail. For most of its existence, it is a single, unambiguous lane of asphalt. But under certain conditions, usually in the twilight hours or when a low, misting rain blurs the world, the road undergoes a subtle and profound duplication. Drivers approaching the apex of the switchback report that the road ahead seems to split. Not with a dividing line or a fork, but as if the very fabric of the highway has developed a fault. Two identical paths appear, diverging by maybe 10 degrees, each one looking as real and solid as the other. They both follow the general curve of the mountainside. Both are bordered by the same scrub pine and the same faded guardrail. The duplication lasts only for a few seconds, a fleeting window of impossible choice, before one of the paths seems to solidify into reality and the other simply fades, like a mirage evaporating. There is no consistent pattern to which path remains, it is different for different travelers. The experience of witnessing the split is overshadowed by the decision it forces. In that brief moment, the driver must choose. Instinct, training, and a desperate grasp on reality compel a selection, left or right. And in that instant of commitment, a universal feeling floods the cabin. It is the deep, gut-level conviction that the choice was wrong. Not dangerous, but fundamentally incorrect, as if answering a question with a truth that is technically right but morally in error. A profound sense of unease settles in, a feeling of having violated a natural order by picking one when both existed. The most baffling reports come afterward. When comparing notes, or even in solitary recollection, some drivers claim a contradictory memory. They remember, with perfect clarity, taking both paths simultaneously. They describe a sensation of duality, of seeing the valley from two slightly different angles at once, of feeling the wheel turn in two directions. These memories are not fuzzy or dreamlike. They are sharp, sensory, and impossible. They feel less like a trick of the mind and more like a glimpse into a moment where the rules of singular existence briefly frayed. Geological surveys show nothing unusual about the rock beneath this section of road. Engineers insist the sightlines and road geometry are standard. The phenomenon seems to exist purely in the perceptual realm, triggered by specific light, weather, and perhaps, a state of driver fatigue. Yet, local archives hold a curious footnote. The original trail that became this highway was blazed by two brothers, Samuel and Joseph Corbin, in the 1880s. They were surveyors tasked with finding the best route. Historical journals indicate they argued vehemently at this very spot. Samuel insisted the path should cut high across the granite face. Joseph was equally adamant it should swing lower, following a softer contour. The argument was never resolved. Samuela's notes indicate he won, and the higher path was taken. But Joseph's personal diary, discovered later, claims with equal certainty that his lower route was chosen. The official map seems to show a compromise, a line that somehow incorporates both ideas in a single, improbable curve. This historical duality may be the key. Some theorists of place memory suggest that intense, unresolved conflict, especially between two equally strong wills, can create a kind of perceptual scar. The land itself, or perhaps the collective memory of the event, cannot settle on a single outcome. Under the right conditions of liminal light, it presents both possibilities, forcing the modern traveler to reenact the impossible choice. The feeling of wrongness is the echo of the brothers' unresolved conflict. The memory of taking both paths is a fleeting, psychic glimpse into the moment before the argument was settled, when both realities still coexisted. Split Mountain Switch is not a haunting of person, but of decision. It is a place where history could not make up its mind. And so it asks every passerby to try, knowing they too will fail. The road is solid. Your tires are on a single path. But for one disorienting second, you are given a vote in a century-old debate. And no matter how you cast it, the result feels like a loss, leaving behind only the eerie, indelible memory of a journey you took, and also did not take, forever wondering about the road you didn't choose, and why it felt so real. On a steep, forested mountain pass, there is a sharp, downhill curve known to truckers and locals as Last Break Bend. The approach is clearly marked with warning signs, the pavement is well maintained, and by all standard measures, it is a manageable, if serious, piece of road. Yet, it has a reputation that transcends its engineering. Vehicles experience a sudden, total, and inexplicable loss of braking power at the exact moment they enter the curve. It is not a mechanical failure that can be later diagnosed. The brake pedal goes soft, sinking to the floor with no resistance, as if the hydraulic lines have been severed. Steering remains, but the driver is now a passenger in a heavy object gaining speed on a sharp bend. Panic is immediate and absolute. The guardrail rushes closer, the trees become a solid wall, the abyss below the road yawns. The driver grips the wheel, fighting for control, certain of disaster. The vehicle passes the apex of the curve. The moment the road begins to straighten out, braking power returns. Not gradually, but instantly and fully. The pedal firms up, the vehicle slows, and the driver is left shaking, pulling over onto the narrow shoulder, their heart hammering. A subsequent inspection reveals nothing wrong. The brake fluid is full, the pads are thick, the system is bled and functional. The failure existed only for those 20 seconds of the turn. But there is a second, more intimate report shared only in hushed tones. During those seconds of terror, many drivers have reported a distinct physical sensation. They feel the unmistakable shape and weight of other hands overlaid upon their own, gripping tightly, helping to guide the vehicle through the curve they can no longer slow down for. The hands feel solid, competent, and cold. A mechanical forensic analyst named Carl was hired by the Regional Transportation Authority. After a cluster of near-identical incident reports from the Bend, his task was to find a common cause, perhaps a chemical spill degrading brake fluid, or a magnetic anomaly affecting sensors in modern cars. He arrived with a fully instrumented test vehicle, its brakes in perfect order, and a data logger to capture every parameter. He made 3 normal passes to establish a baseline. On the 4th, he initiated the test. As he entered last brake bend at the posted speed, the data stream on his screen flickered. The pressure sensors in the brake line plummeted to 0. His foot met no resistance. According to his instruments, his car had no brakes. Yet, the vehicle held its line. He felt the steering wheel turn with a fluid certainty that was not entirely his own. A cool, firm pressure encircled his knuckles, not squeezing, but steering. The sensation was of being coached, of a calm, expert presence in the passenger seat taking the wheel for a critical maneuver. As the bend ended, the pressure vanished. The data stream returned to normal. Brake pressure was nominal. He pulled over. His scientific mind in turmoil. The data showed a failure. His physical experience showed an intervention. Carl spent days at the bend, reviewing old construction plans and accident archives. He found no record of a major fatal crash, no story of a heroic driver saving others at the cost of their own life. Instead, he found a simpler, quieter story. For generations, this stretch of road was the domain of a single family-run tow and recovery service. The father, and then his sons, were legendary for their skill in recovering vehicles from this specific curve in all weather conditions. They knew every inch of its asphalt, every skid mark pattern. Their hands had pulled thousands of steering wheels from wreckage, had gripped tow cables, had guided countless terrified drivers to safety. Carl's theory, which never made his official report, is this. Last brake bend does not cause failures. It reveals a presence. The sudden brake loss is a trigger, a signal of distress. That summons an ingrained response. The feeling of the hands is the muscle memory of expertise. The phantom limb of a skill practiced so deeply it became part of the landscape. It is not a ghost trying to cause a crash, but the echo of a rescuer trying to prevent one. Over and over again, using the only tools left to them, suggestion and shared control. Carl recommended improved signage and a reduced speed limit. He did not recommend any mechanical changes. He now understands why the old-timers at the diner at the base of the pass speak of the bend with a strange respect. They know that while your brakes may fail, you are not alone on that curve. The hands that know the road better than anyone are still there. Waiting for the moment of need. Ready to grip the wheel and guide you through. One more time. Proving that some kinds of skill never really retire. They just become a part of the road itself. Nestled deep within the Baldridge Range lies a road known only as State Route 131. For most of its length, it is an unremarkable ribbon of asphalt. But there is one specific curve, the final switchback before the long descent into Harper's Glen. That has earned the route its ominous local nickname. They call it the road that watches back. This final switchback feels aware. Drivers report a distinct change in atmosphere as they approach the bend. The sound of the engine seems to hollow out. The air grows still and dense. It is not merely a feeling of being watched, which is common in isolated places. It is a specific, focused sensation of being studied by the road itself, as if the asphalt and the granite cut into the hillside have a collective consciousness. And then, the drivers look into their mirrors. It begins as a flicker of movement in the periphery. A driver adjusts the rearview mirror to see more clearly, and for a fleeting moment, the face looking back is not their own. The features are blurred, indistinct, but unmistakably different. A different set of eyes, a different shape of the jaw. Mirrors reflect faces that are not yours. It lasts only a second, a trick of shadow and fatigue, perhaps. But the chill it leaves is lasting and profound. The most commonly reported phenomenon, however, is the phantom pursuit. After navigating the aware switchback, drivers enter a long, straight descent flanked by high rock walls. They continue, shaken by the incident with the mirror, trying to rationalize it away. And then they see it in the distance behind them. The unmistakable twin glow of headlights. The lights follow at a constant distance, neither gaining nor falling back. Instinct forces a check. A glance in the mirror confirms the lights are there, trailing silently. For minutes, they persist. The driver may speed up, but the lights match the new pace effortlessly. They may slow down, and the lights slow in perfect unison, maintaining that same, fixed gap. The sense of being followed becomes unbearable. Finally, the driver musters the courage to look back over their shoulder, to see the vehicle directly. Those who glance back see headlights behind them, but no car is ever found. The lights simply vanish the moment direct visual contact is attempted. The road behind is empty, dark, and still. A trucker named Ben, who has driven Route 131 for 15 years, describes it as a ritual of the road. He says the curve has a memory. He believes it absorbs the anxiety, the urgency, the sheer presence of every traveler who has ever rounded that bend in a state of fear or loneliness. That emotional residue, he theorizes, somehow manifests. The headlights are a replay of a past pursuit, a ghost of someone's paranoia made visible. The road is not haunted by spirits, but by the imprints of emotion left upon it. Scientists from a nearby university conducted a week-long study, mounting cameras on test vehicles. Their instruments recorded subtle, anomalous electromagnetic fluctuations at the exact location of the switchback. Their dry, academic conclusion suggested the area might act as a kind of psychic tape recorder. Under specific conditions of stress and isolation, replaying fragments of past experiences as visual and sensory illusions. But for the few who live in the shadow of the pass, the explanation is simpler. They say the mountain was here long before the road. The cut of the switchback was a wound, a rude interruption of an ancient, silent slope. The road that watches back is the mountain's way of acknowledging the intrusion. It observes the travelers. It shows them fragments of others to remind them they are not the first, nor will they be the last. And the headlights are a courtesy, a companion for the lonely stretch, ensuring no one feels truly alone on its sovereign slope, even if the companionship is an echo. The common advice for navigating that final switchback is pragmatic. Keep your eyes on the road ahead. Do not adjust your mirrors. Do not look for the headlights. Simply acknowledge the feeling, the peculiar awareness of the curve, and drive through it. The road will watch, but if you do not meet its gaze, it will let you pass. You carry the unease with you down into the valley, a faint whisper at the edge of your senses, a story you will question in the daylight but feel in your bones every time you glance at a rearview mirror on a dark, empty road. Thank you, my dear friend, for riding these haunted Appalachian switchback roads with me tonight. The mountains of Kentucky are ancient and patient. They have watched travelers come and go for centuries. And they remember every mistake made along their winding paths. If you ever find yourself driving these roads after dark, remember these stories. Slow down. Trust your instincts. And never stop for figures standing where no one should be. Some roads do not want you to leave. And some mountains never forget. Rest well tonight. Keep the lights close. And until our next journey into the shadows, drive carefully. Because in the Appalachians, the road is always watching.